Well, 67 official starters in the marathon, and it appears that there are 2 unofficial starters who the police are trying to clear away. But this little boy will surely remember his days leading the field out from the Olympic Stadium. The man on the right there has rather more serious things on his mind, and there's a danger of them clashing. In fact, he cracks the little boy one with his right arm. That's Irishman turned Canadian Peter Maher, who's already set off and has opened up some 30 or 40 metres on the rest of the field. And even somebody running barefoot, Samnalu from Samoa. But Peter Maher, looking over his shoulder, sees a large group behind him that includes Di Castella, the reigning champion, in the green shorts, and probably some 30 or 40 after 3 kilometres, tucked in behind the early leader. And whether they win or lose, they'll have seen the sights of Rome as they run in front of the magnificent Cathedral of St. Peter's, full of worshippers, though many of them seem to have turned out into the square outside. Running on the famous cobblestones, there may be 1 million people here at Easter, but really quite a few have turned out today as well. But Peter Maher quite definitely has opened up a lead, and the chasing group unsure whether to follow him or not. He has very little record, he's only run 1 or 2 marathons, and the senior group here is being sensible. Di Castella, wearing number 23, won the world title 4 years ago and has been consistently one of the world's great marathon runners. Conditions beginning to warm up. It started this morning with quite heavy rain, which the marathon runners quite look forward to. But in fact the sun is beginning to come out. But Di Castella looks strong and full of running. Obviously not worrying about Maher. He's got Saleh of Djibouti, who's won the last 2 World Cups. And if he feels really in need of a shower, he can stop at the famous Fontana di Trevi. But as we look down the Corsa, there in the lead is Maher by at least 200 metres. You can see the rest of the runners behind that large truck, which carries the press and some timing devices. So they're running their race, and Peter Maher up front is running his. Temperature now climbing into the mid-20s, 20-25 degrees. And after 15 kilometres, Maher is really well ahead. As they come past the Colosseum, he's going to have quite a lead. It's a slight climb here, though in fact basically a pretty fast course, and he's tucking into the left-hand side to stay in the shadow, and so are the following group. Includes Hugh Jones, winner of the London Marathon, the Kanga of Tanzania, who was second to Di Castella in the Commonwealth Championships 5 years ago, and Maher there leading by 40 seconds after 15 kilometres officially from Di Castella and Guta of Ethiopia. The sun slanting down as they're almost approaching halfway, and still Maher leads. Interesting man as he comes past the ancient Colosseum, which has seen a few sights in its time. Peter Maher took up running only about 2 or 3 years ago. He's quite a wealthy businessman, decided he was very fat and overweight, started to run, and the pounds and the kilos came off, and the speed increased, and now here he is leading the World Championships, and it's not a fluke, he's leading it by a considerable margin and still looking quite strong. So one has to believe that the chasing pack will begin to close on him. There's Hugh Jones on the left, and it seems to be a group now of about 6 or 7 as he leaves the Colosseum behind, approaches 21 kilometres, virtually halfway, in 1 hour 5 minutes. So en route for about a 2:11 marathon, which will be pretty respectable in these conditions. Very warm and very humid. You can see now the chasing pack and their motorcycle escorts closing in on the Canadian. And they do a loop, as you can see, from the runners on the other side of the road, several times around the Colosseum and around the Piazza Venezia. And now this group is beginning to look really quite menacing. Moneghetti of Australia has moved up as Di Castella's dropped back. Ikanga, Saleh of Djibouti, and Jones of Great Britain, and Nekdahi of Morocco. And this looks like the moment of truth after 27.5 kilometres. Peter Maher has been caught by this formidable group. Little Ikanga from Tanzania And Saleh, who came from nowhere to lead Djibouti to 2 World Cup victories. And so we've got a group of 6 now after 30 kilometers. Jones, Ikanga, Saleh, Monighetti, Wakihuru from Kenya, another dark horse who's won the Beppo Marathon, but apart from a very fast 10,000 meter time, has never really been extended over the marathon. As they come past the Spanish Steps, the tourists for once leave off buying jewellery and turn to watch the athletes. And Hugh Jones now beginning to go off the back, leaving 5 leaders. And now it's down to 3 after 36.5 kilometers. It's David Wakihuru. His name sounds vaguely Japanese, which is interesting because he spends quite a lot of time in Japan. He won a scholarship to study there. He speaks English, Japanese, and of course his native language as a Kikuyu from Kenya. He speaks Swahili. But he looks very good, and now they're beginning to leave Meneghetti of Australia behind. Wakihuru then and Ahmed Saleh together, Monighetti of Australia behind them as they starting to approach the stadium, coming past now St. Peter's. And for the first time we catch sight of Gelindo Bordion of Italy, the European champion last year in Stuttgart. Surprised everybody by winning that. He seemed to be suffering earlier on, but he's getting stronger and stronger as the race progresses, and of course as the Italian crowds come out and cheer him. A wonderful view there of the Benini Piazza of St. Peter's. But no time for tourism now for the 2 leaders, and Wakihuru seems to be putting the pressure on, but Saleh cannot be written off. And Saleh, of course, also run in the New York Marathon, the Chicago Marathon, and really been one of the most consistent top marathon runners in the world for the last 3 years. But the Kenyans are having such a great championships, and Wakihuru is full of running there and is beginning now to pull away as they come out of the square of St. Peter's. Looks briefly over his shoulder, but there's no question after 2 hours of running, this is a real attack, and probably the final and decisive attack that we will see in the marathon. Coming over those slippery cobblestones, David Wakihuru strikes, and strikes cruelly hard, and Saleh just doesn't seem to be able to respond. His whole frame is sagging a little, whereas Wakihuru is up and running and full of bounce and life. And behind them, Bordion is beginning to make a move now and has caught the Australian Meneghetti. So the first and second places seem secure, but there's a real race for third. But Wakihuru just taking a spray from a small plastic tube he's carrying in his right hand. He's keeping his mouth clear and fresh so he can concentrate. This is his 3rd marathon. He's best ever 2:13, but he's a 28:06 10,000 meter runner, so he's got real pace on the track. And he has real authority in the way he's running this race. You can see the clear concentration on his features. And he's opened up a considerable gap now after 40 kilometers. And the real race, I suppose, the fascinating race, in 3rd place by Monighetti, who sounds almost for an Australian sounds Italian, and Bordion, who's lurking uncomfortably on his shoulder as the leader comes now well within the sight of the stadium. The crowd cheering him over the last kilometre. It's been a brave run and seemingly relatively untroubled one for Wakihuru. Saleh is well behind him, and even further back then the race for 3rd place, and these two running very cautiously, aware of each other, and I'm sure Meneghetti wondering what will happen when they run into the stadium with Bordion behind him. But their reception will already have been conditioned by the cheers raised for this man. Kenya coming in for a 3rd gold medal. It's been a wonderful championships for them. The Kenyan delegation here applauding a fine, fine performance. They really are a well-prepared team this time, and such a popular team too. Saleh just coming into the stadium now, through the tunnel, has run well. He can't be disappointed with the silver medal, doesn't see the cones. Some of the marking by the officials has been a little suspect on occasions, but generally this has been a well-run championships and a most enjoyable one. Saleh looks across and sees that the winner's coming home. It's going to be a reasonably fast time in the conditions, 2 hours 11 minutes 47.6 seconds. A big grin, not only by the winner but by his delegation. Saleh's reasonably sure of second, Meneghetti dropping back as Bordion, lifted by the crowd, sets out in a seemingly impossible task of trying to catch Saleh, who looks nervously over his shoulder as the Italian menacingly comes up behind him with every stride. I think he's got just about enough cushion. There's about 80 metres there, but Bourdillon is biting into it hard. The Italian flags are out. What a great championships this has been for the home crowd. But Saleh, I think, will just about keep going and make certain of his second place. And it'll be Bourdillon really sprinting home now as Saleh finishes. Bourdillon coming down fast. He left it just a little too late. Never mind, it's another medal and a medal in front of his home crowd. And what could be sweeter than that?